Prophecy. It was on that 1st of December 2022 that man of God prophet Anobeezea seeking the face of God in prayer mountain. And he said, you should pray for pilots. You should pray for pilots. That is seeing pilots and plane crash. We should pray for pilots. These were his words.
The thing I'm seeing, airplane. We pray for pilots. We pray for pilots. We pray for pilots. I'm seeing planes being crashed.
And if they start to get worried that there is a Cessna that's being unresponsive, either because it's nefarious or because something happened to the pilot, they are going to notify DOD. Now, there's 10 military bases around the DC area. We don't know where these scrambled from, likely Bowling, if to be realistic here. And they would have been scrambled because of the unresponsiveness. Now, once again, to people listening, the unresponsiveness isn't necessarily nefarious. Bad things happen to pilots that are not ill will, and we will find out what happened. The fact that the plane went down before it reached DC, at least to me, suggests that, and that it wasn't shot down, at least to me suggests that something happened in the cockpit that made the pilot unresponsive, and the plane just went down. A tragedy, and obviously scary to people in the DC area who are not used to these scrambles happening often.
That's right. And obviously people who are in the Washington, D.C. area and lived through 9/11 recall that there was that period after 9/11 where, things had to be tightened up from an air defense standpoint over the nation's capital. Juliet, Natasha, stay with us for just a few moments. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to gather some more information about what took place with these F-16 scrambling in response to a plane that ultimately crashed in the mountains of Virginia. We'll have more on this in just a few moments. Stay with us.
This is CNN Breaking News.
You are live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Jim Acosta in Washington. We do start this hour with breaking news, an update now on where things stand with the breaking news we've been telling you about in the last several minutes. F-16 fighter jets scrambled around Washington, D.C. earlier today, shortly before a small plane crashed in Virginia. Here's what it sounded like. Take a look at this video from one person's security camera in the D.C. area. You can see there that little dog that was on that back porch, back deck, was scared pretty badly by this sonic boom. CNN correspondents and analysts are working this story right now. CNN national security analyst Julia Kayyem is with us, also CNN's transportation analyst Mary Schiavo. Let's start with CNN's Natasha Bertrand. Natasha, if you can, update our viewers on where things stand with this situation. It caught a lot of people by surprise here in the Washington, D.C. area a few hours ago.
Yeah, so let's just walk folks through the series of events because a lot of things appeared to happen at roughly the same time. So around 3 p.m. there was that very loud sonic boom that was heard across D.C., Maryland, Virginia. It was very, very loud, and it was unclear what exactly that was. And then the FAA released a statement saying that a small aircraft had actually crashed in Southwest Virginia. It was unclear whether those two things were connected, but the Pentagon then we learned, according to U.S. officials, that U.S. F-16 fighter jets were actually scrambled to essentially chase that small aircraft that had crashed in Southwest Virginia for reasons that are unclear at this point. It is not known whether that aircraft actually violated DC airspace or whether it was just too close, or whether the pilot was unresponsive, and that caused U.S. officials to become extremely concerned. But that sonic boom that was heard across the district earlier this afternoon, it was the result of those F-16 fighter jets being scrambled. They were flying so fast that it actually broke the sound barrier. So we actually have even more video of that sonic boom just to really give a sense for just how loud it was. Take a listen. Now, the FAA did release a statement on the aircraft that did crash. We should note that the jets did not actually shoot it down. We are told that that the jets really did not have anything to do with why it crashed. However, the FAA statement said that it crashed into a mountainous terrain and sparsely populated area of Southwest Virginia around 3 p.m. The aircraft took off from Elizabethton Municipal Airport in Tennessee and was bound to Long Island MacArthur Airport in New York. Now, the flight path itself is also still unclear. As I said, it is not known at this point whether it actually pierced D.C. airspace or whether it was just around the airspace, and that made U.S. officials concerned. So we are expecting more information to come from the Pentagon and U.S. officials in the coming hours, Jim.
All right, Natasha, let me go to Mary Schiavo, our aviation analyst on this. Mary, I just got a text from my mom who lives in Northern Virginia, and she said she heard the sonic boom, and she thought it sounded like a bomb went off. It was that loud, and if you watch those videos we just played for our viewers, it was very loud. I'm sure it startled a lot of people. But to what Natasha was saying a few moments ago, it sounds like, and of course we don't have all the facts here, but it could be something as simple as this small plane took off from that northeastern tip of Tennessee, was on its way to Long Island, and became unresponsive, and they had to scramble the fighter jets because in this post 9/11 world, we just can't take any chances anymore with air safety, air defenses over the nation's capital. But what can you shed some light on for us?
Well, you summed it up pretty well, I think. That's what it looks like by looking at online flight tracker websites. So if this plane did take off from Tennessee, it filed a flight plan. I had put all the information in that you do if you're doing a proper controlled flight. It was bound for New York. It was supposed to land in New York, and then from New York it was supposed to go to Florida, I believe Melbourne, Florida. And so that's the flight plan it filed. By looking at flight tracker and online data, this plane took off and got to altitude above 30,000 feet soon after takeoff, but it did not vary from that. So it stayed at this high altitude, and as you're approaching...
Mary's shot may have frozen there. Let me go to Juliet Kayyem. Juliet, in this post 9/11 world, it's perfectly understandable why those fighter jets might have scrambled. They just can't take any chances anymore.
That's exactly right. To me, this is the only question that remains is the unresponsiveness due to nefarious activity, which I think is less likely, or something horrible went wrong in that airplane, and the fighter jet scrambled because you do not want to wait until airspace is violated, especially if there are the pieces of evidence that suggest that the plane is unresponsive. Remember, from the viewpoint of the Air Force and the military and DC, you don't know why the plane is unresponsive at that moment. All you know is it's somewhat getting closer to DC, and that's why they scramble. By the time everything occurs, the plane is already down, which also leads more credence to the belief that something went wrong in the Cessna. I should say this is not a small Cessna. Just looking online at its identification, it's a business class Cessna. So we don't know if it was just a pilot or if there were others in the plane. We'll get a passenger list as well. So that's where my focus is right now. The F-16 scramble from the Air Force is absolutely appropriate. And scary. There's no question about that for people in DC, but has an explanation, and we shouldn't always go to the nefarious one. It's just part of what the apparatus looks like now. You just simply don't know from the ground what's happening up above, and that's why they scramble.
No, you're absolutely right. And let me go back to Mary Schiavo, because Mary, I think your shot may have frozen up there. If you could finish your thought, you were saying that judging by what you're seeing on a flight tracker program, it may just be something as simple as this plane went down in the mountains of Virginia.
Yeah, that's right. And it looks like because the altitude was steady, it stayed above 30,000 feet. It didn't descend. It didn't vary much. The airspeed varied a little, but not much. So it looks like it was headed for New York. It was supposed to land there, go to Florida, and then turned, and at that point became unresponsive. And over the years, we have covered many of these where something happens to the pilot. Usually it's a rapid decompression in the plane. Scrambling the aircraft usually happens when the pilot's not responsive, but in all cases, they have never had to shoot them down. So it doesn't look like a hijack situation based only on the flight track. Obviously, we don't have any information that they squawked a hijack code or they squawked any other kind of code. It looks like an unresponsive pilot pilot like others we've reported on in the past, but they had to scramble because of the flight track takes it pretty close to Washington, D.C., and that's what they're supposed to do, go up and find out what's going on.
All right, very good. Mary Schiavo, Julia Kayam, Natasha Bertrand, and my mom in Fairfax County, Virginia, who checked in with me as well. Got a report from her as well. Ladies, thanks very much for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it.